Guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video I want to chat about two bipod options, more specifically the Atlas Cal on the left and the MDT Ckye-Pod on the right. Now, both Atlas and MDT offer bipods in various options, okay, where you have either longer legs, different ways they attach, different ways that they can articulate. The big takeaway I want you guys to take from today's video is not to skimp. In other words, not to try and be cheap when it comes to buying a bipod. Even if you have a rifle like this, so this is a Howa 1500, okay, let's ignore the optic because this is obviously quite a high-end optic. Howa 1500 in an MDT chassis, you've invested a lot of money into your rifle system. So to go on Amazon and buy a cheap knockoff of an Atlas or whatever, just don't do it. I've had so many friends or people I know buy the cheap versions of those and they end up breaking and they're loose, and now you're going to start missing shots because you have some wobble in your system. So that's very important. So invest in a quality bipod. Again, as with everything we do in this sport, if you buy the right thing the first time, it'll end up saving you money in the long run, because you won't, you know, when you buy that fake Atlas and you try and sell that, it's got no value. Okay, so buy the right thing the first time, even if that means shooting off a bag for a month or two longer because you can't invest into a nice bipod. It's going to be worth it long run, so keep that in mind. Anyway, so a couple of things. We've had to modify this Atlas Cal a little bit. So I bought this. It comes with the American Defense quick detach lever. Now, as you guys know, I like running Arca systems on my rifles. That just gives me that little bit more modularity. So we've added the APW clamp. This is a new product we're manufacturing, and what's really cool about that, we actually ship it with the Picatinny rail. So if you've got another bipod other than these two that actually go to Picatinny, or you want to keep your Picatinny mount because you're actually running your Atlas on different rifles and one of the rifles may have Picatinny, you can simply undo that quick detach lever and still use your Atlas on a Picatinny. So that's, we're shipping it with both. Anyway, so that's the modification we did on the Atlas, just to have these sort of apples for apples with, because obviously the Ckye-Pod, I bought my Ckye-Pod with the Arca lever or Arca rail system, because most of my rifles, in fact every single one of my rifles except for my air rifle, has Arca on that. Now, which one is the right bipod for you? I shot with an Atlas for many years, okay, 2 years at least. By the way, one thing I also have to notice, both of these bipods we have modified the feet on. I just like a spike feet a little bit more, just for shooting off concrete and stuff like that. Not ideal when you're shooting off a car, so keep that in mind. I shot with an Atlas for probably the first 2 years that I was doing precision rifle competition, and I never really felt that it hindered me. It's a very simple system. You know, you hit this lever on the front here or on the side, your legs can fold back, they can fold forward, and they've got a very positive lock. Now, initially, the first Atlas I had the PSR model, which basically also allowed that I could pan. Okay, it had the pan function. In other words, if I planted that bipod and I had a target over there, I could engage that target, and without lifting up or dragging the bipod in the sand, I could physically just pan over the rifle. Now, the pan feature is also available on the Ckye-Pod. In fact, on this Cal, it does not have pan, it's only got tilt. Now, tilt is this motion, okay? In other words, that you can make sure your reticle is 100% level. Now, sometimes the pan function is a little bit of an annoyance, because if you're shooting something and you're running, or you're picking up your rifle and for whatever reason that foot was to hook on something, and next time you put your rifle down, now all of a sudden the bipod's like this. So sometimes the pan function is a little bit of a pain in the ass. I do believe on the new version of the Ckye-Pod, they're going to give us the ability to lock that off. On this Atlas Cal, the pan function's not there. A lot of people prefer not having the pan function. Also, what's really nice about the Cal is we've got this new lever on the back here, and you can play with the tension as to how much you want that tilt function, how much force you need to manipulate that tilt function. On the Gen 1 Ckye-Pod that we've got here, you need a tool to adjust the tension on those screws. Now, the Ckye-Pod does have some other benefits, okay, quite a lot of other benefits. Okay, now in these two specific models, let me just make a little bit more space here so you guys can see this better. So first of all, we have adjustability like this, so we can adjust how wide we want these legs to come out. Now, I really like that, because the wider you have those legs, the more stable your rifle becomes. If you're shooting prone and you're shooting groups, you're doing load development, okay, I quite like having them wide all the way. That's going to open up sort of that center of gravity for my rifle, and it feels like my rifle is really steady. The other thing that's really cool about that is on the Atlas, for example, if we were to mirror this, there's no way to adjust these legs on the Atlas. This is pretty much all you're gonna get height-wise. Now, if we pop that over there, if we move these legs in, with the Ckye-Pod in this configuration, if you've tilted or brought these legs in all the way and extended them all the way out, it is a little bit higher than the Atlas. However, the legs are closer together. So if you think about that sort of triangle to get as steady as possible, this will probably be a little bit more steady. Now, what's really cool about the Arca technology is if you need extra height, okay, you can simply loosen that clamp a little bit, and as you slide it back on your rifle, it'll increase that angle and you'll gain some height that way. That is something that I've had to utilize in the past at shooting at some crazy angles without trying to make another plan. Now, a couple of things I also really like, okay, with the Atlas, you got to pull these knobs back like this, okay, and that releases the mechanism in order to close those legs out. On the Ckye-Pod, you got to push this tab in, and that goes up. So it's a little bit quicker, I feel, to collapse the Ckye-Pod. The other thing that's really cool about the Ckye-Pod over the Atlas, on the Atlas, these are stuck. So you also have to pull this tab in to get the legs out. Now on the Ckye-Pod, you could simply pull the legs like that. So deploying the Ckye-Pod is a little bit faster. Now, a little bit of trivia, if you guys didn't know, this was actually not an MDT product at first. This was developed by a gentleman called Sky Thomas, and MDT purchased the company from him. That's how I have it, at least. And now they've sort of brought this to the mainstream. Now, I'm really excited to get the triple pull version of the Ckye-Pod for hunting, because that's essentially going to give me 3 versions of that, and you can get really high off the ground for a hunting environment. Now, let me show you guys practically where, like, for example, the pan function is a nice to have, where it can also be a benefit, and where not having the pan function could also be an issue, as well as exploiting some of the other functions that the Ckye-Pod offers with being just a little bit more modular. So let's jump on over to these tires that I think will be a good example. We have our little rifle here, MDT ESS, and we're going to slap on, in fact, let's start with the Atlas first. Let's get that on. And that's what's really cool about the Arca. I mean, that is literally putting it on pretty seamlessly. Okay, now, an example, if I was to be presented with an obstacle like this in a match, very likely I would shoot it with just a bag, purely because it's less things to worry about. So let's say I wanted to shoot off here. Okay, now this is where these little spike feet will come in really handy. Now, if I was to have a target in sort of that direction where there is a target over there, I could come in here, boom, engage that target, okay, click. Now, if I wanted to come over and shoot another target over there, because I don't have pan, I'm going to start getting friction on this bipod, okay, and it's not allowing me to move my rifle further than that. Whereas if I had the Ckye-Pod, or for that matter, if I had an Atlas with the pan ability like the PSR model, you would be able to do that. So that's kind of things you guys have to keep in mind when shopping for a bipod. Let's sort of try and mimic that Atlas level over there. So same thing, I have the target in my sights over there. I'm going to do a little dry fire. Okay, and now I'm able to pan. And if you guys get close on that, so without moving the bipod feet stay in its same position, I can actually pan that rifle over. Now that is an advantage on something like this. Another thing that's really cool too, because the Ckye-Pod's a little bit quicker to deploy, if for whatever reason I needed more height down here, I could just pull on that and really quickly give myself more height, which is sometimes, oops, I'm hooking there, sometimes a little bit of a problem. The other problem I had with shooting with the Atlas is how that mechanism works. So if we went over to a little bit of a simulated prone stage over here, if I was to engage that target from the prone position and I needed more height, okay, now there's a couple of ways. Yes, I could loosen the clamp and just slide over, but with the Ckye-Pod I can pull that rifle back, lean it over, and simply pull on my legs and instantly give myself more elevation. Now the problem comes when using this mechanism. If you're dealing with a heavy rifle already, you also have to now pull these tabs down and lift your rifle up. So it's a little bit more difficult to gain that quick elevation adjustment on your bipod with the mechanism on the Atlas. Okay, so while we set up here, I just want to demonstrate for you guys the difficulty that you might have to gain more elevation out of the Atlas, just because you have to pull those knobs down to adjust the height. So let's say, for example, I was shooting a target nice and low here, and let's just do a dry fire on that flower. Okay, and now I had to engage the target up on that ridge line. I have to pull my rifle back, which you obviously have to do with the other one, but then also pull this mechanism down and sort of lift. I try and always cant the rifle over, and then on the other side I cant it over. Whereas on the Ckye-Pod, I find you can just lift it up and it's a little bit quicker. Again, not a deal breaker, but something to keep in mind. Right, so a couple of things to keep in mind here. The Ckye-Pod is quite a bit more expensive. Some might say it's a spendy purchase, okay? Now, as with all things in our lovely sport, nothing's exactly cheap, and you kind of get what you pay for with both of these. I would say this is aimed at the hardcore precision rifle competitor. Now, you might be, and by this I mean the Ckye-Pod. Now, you might be new in the sport, and maybe your plan is to long-term become a more proficient shooter, you know, challenge for top 20s, those kind of things. Then I would say, off the bat, you'd be better off just buying the Ckye-Pod, getting it done, and just having this and practicing with it. And the reason I say practice with it, because the Ckye-Pod has so much articulation and different directions and all the features got built into it, I find that sometimes for new shooters going over to the Ckye-Pod, they might find themselves on a stage like the tires we did just now, and they may be a little bit overwhelmed with which button does what do I need to push to, you know, have the bipod move in the way you need it to move. So again, if you're gonna go precision rifle heavy into competition, I would say this is a really good buy. If you're a recreational shooter just looking to get a good bipod, I do not think you're gonna go wrong with the Ckye-Pod. Now, could a recreational shooter or a weekend warrior, as we used to call people in the moto game, get away with the Ckye-Pod? Absolutely. For the same reason a recreational shooter can buy a Vortex Razor because they want to and they want to invest in nice things. So I think either way, you're going to be good to go. The biggest takeaway here for you guys is just buy a quality bipod. Don't skimp, don't invest into a good rifle system and then, you know, the weakest link is the one bit that's actually touching the ground when you're shooting prone. So buy a nice bipod. I hope this video has given you a little bit of insight between the two. Again, I don't want to say one is better than the other one. For my game, precision rifle shooting, I think this one is going to give you a slight edge. So yeah, that's just where my school of thought is. And as I said earlier, I never felt limited by the Atlas. It's almost like, you know, you don't know what you're missing until you actually have it. And that's why lately I kind of feel like I'm going to give that edge for precision rifle, National Rifle League style matches. It's definitely going to go to the Ckye-Pod. Guys, I want to thank you for watching. Again, MDT, thanks for making this video possible. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a beautiful Christmas and stay safe. Bye.